The 27th of February 1950, being the day of my birth, is one end of my wheel, and now as I speak these words I'm over 74 years on from that day and hurtle uncontrollably towards the other end of the wheel. Now anyone with even the smallest artistic leanings in them is supposed to have a magnum opus, defined in my dictionary as a work of art, music or literature that is regarded as the most important or best work that an artist, composer or writer has produced. It could equally well be writing a book as it could be climbing a high mountain or running an ultramarathon. In other words, something that's at the very limit of your normal expectations of yourself. I can't cover any of these particularly, but I did write and record a music album of 10 songs entitled The Other End of the Wheel. The actual recording took place in 2005 as a result of getting my song brain in gear over the preceding couple of years when time and inspiration permitted me to write both the music and the words. I've played the guitar since persuading my dad in the early 1960s that this would be a good idea, and having heard the Shadows play Apache and thinking it couldn't be too difficult, I was wrong there. If it had been that easy, everyone would have had number one hits. But the guitar duly arrived after some repeated persuasion and him playing the old card, you save half and once you have, I'll put the other half to it. Now, I can't remember if this played out in full, but I did become the proud owner of a 6-string acoustic guitar together with Ivor Marant's tutor book of chords. I learned the basic ones, found out how they fitted together melodically, developed calluses on the ends of my left hand fingers, and in no time found I could strum along to all sorts of songs. I suppose this is because I have what is known as something of a musical ear. But my skill and confidence levels really increased when I found I could play the guitar parts in Paul Simon's songs in essentially the same way that he did. Ray Davies' songs, particularly from Sunny Afternoon onwards, were also comfortable to strum along to. Fortunately, hit songs of the 1960s generally weren't complicated, and this musical ear saw to the rest. I should add that all this playing along was done by ear and not by reading sheet music. The guitar and singing in general took something of a back seat for much of the time up to my 50th birthday, career, family, etc., etc. I would always pick the guitar up from time to time and have a strum, but nothing really more serious than that. My inspiration to do something a little bit more serious was directed towards a fundraiser for the Romania aid programme in the early 1990s. And as a family, we recorded a couple of songs which I had written. Even Alice, who must have been only 4 years old at the time, and she performed brilliantly. Every cassette made was sold and raised enough money to buy a second-hand ambulance to ferry goods over to the orphanages in Romania, which was a fantastic result. Then it was our silver wedding anniversary in 1999, and what lovelier thing to do than to write and record a special song for your wife. I did, and it was well received. The seed was sown. I enjoyed the process, so why shouldn't I write and record an entire album? There were probably many reasons why not, but I set to it without a particular plan in mind and without specific influences. I wanted the music just to evolve and settle within itself with sequences of chords and notes which coexist happily, and then the words and the stories could settle with them as if they should always have been together. I had grown to like that classic pop-rock combination of guitars, piano and organ, and soon I had completed the writing and arrangement of 10 songs with which I was happy. Then came the next big question, where to record it and who with? I asked around and the name Fred Purser at Trinity Heights Studio in the West End of Newcastle cropped up more than once on the basis of, if you want it done properly, he's your man. As I might only do this once, better to have it done properly. I met up with Fred, explained all, got on very well with him, and for a very full-on 4 days, we set aside the time in February 2005 for the recordings to take place. I would sing and play acoustic guitar. Fred, a seasoned rock musician, would play lead guitar and bass, and his friend Adam Burgess could play keyboards. My son Adam would drum, and there were spot rolls for daughter Alice on piano, and the family Clare, that's Roland, Linda, Jane and Peter from Westbury-on-Trim near Bristol, at whose house one of the tracks was actually recorded and mastered by Fred in Newcastle. Each song was layered up instrument by instrument, and Fred then waved his magic wand over it all, with the end result being better than I thought it could ever be in my imagination. It's actually a cracking recording. It's well performed, finely engineered. I still marvel at it now in spite of the years that have gone by since that recording. The only outstanding difficulty was when planning the recording, was the actual title of the album, which may even be linked to the title of a track as well. Sue and I had taken off to London for a few days in 2004, part of which was a pre-arranged ride on the London Eye, followed by a boat trip down the Thames. Now, the trip on the Eye was great, and as we disembarked, we were looking around for the boat, which would take us on part 2 of the event. Not seeing anything likely, I ended up asking a man in a uniform who looked as though he might know. He volunteered straight away that the boat I wanted was at the other end of the wheel. In other words, along the quay to the east end of the London Eye. Sue and I looked at each other and smiled instinctively. This was the title, an expression which means whatever you want it to, especially as wheels don't have ends, but a title which resonated immediately. The last track on the album carries the album title as well, A Thank You for a Life, about a wheel coming full circle, for which the album title seems particularly apt. And by one of life's strange and unforeseen coincidences, on the day I was recording the vocal for this song, my brother Rodney phoned to say that our mother, 91 years old and in a care home, had taken a turn and was not likely to live much longer. After a couple more messages over the next couple of hours, he texted to say that she had finally passed away. I said to Fred that if I was distracted, it was because of the news I just received. He immediately assumed that the session would be terminated, but I was actually quick to say no, as carrying on seemed an honourable thing to do, and also a way of saying thank you to my mum for all she'd brought to my life. This new and unexpected circumstance added real depth and meaning to the words of this particular song, and poignancy to the recording, which I hope actually shows through. I'm really proud of this one, as indeed I am of the entire album, which is dedicated to George and Elsie Barnes, without whom... It's my magnum opus, and something of me to leave behind come the day when my wheel ceases to turn.